Hi everyone, this is our third episode of a Humans in Surfing podcast. Lena is here, Twiggy is here, and as usual we're looking for useful tools for surfers to get better in surfing and to be better surfers as a better humans, I guess.
We're just going to pick some subjects and chat about them.
All right, the subject we picked for chat today is etiquette in surfing. So how can we be better surfers again, and how can we behave appropriately in a lineup that who's there at the same time can enjoy their surfing and enjoy the atmosphere.
And I will add to this, a lot of what we're going to talk about is situational and relative to us. So the way I was brought up as a surfer and the way Elena came in and was brought up as a surfer, we both come along different paths, which I think will be really relevant and helpful to speak about. And also we both live in a place that's very highly tourist driven. So it's going to be different. Our situations are going to be different to other people's situations, but we're just trying to lay the groundwork for some perspective on this whole subject. And it's a big subject. So we're going to try and break it down as best that we can without it getting too big.
Absolutely true that surfing has become more and more popular all over the world, and more people interested in starting to surf in any age, and it makes an ocean very busy, especially in the touristic places such Bali. In other countries where water is warm and ocean is nice and there are lots of waves all around the year. And so, first we try to explain the concept of lineup etiquette and why it is important, why actually etiquette and rules are important for both beginners and experienced surfers.
So let's start with a really basic question. What is etiquette? And the answer really is, or based around, awareness. So we don't know what we don't know, but given the tools and the information, the knowledge of something, we then have a groundwork, a base of something to work with. So I think that's a really important place to start because a lot of, let's say, for example, in Bali, surf schools might just want to churn out as many customers as possible because, hey, that's making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but sometimes in that, etiquette conversations might get a little bit lost, and so it's good to start with that and just let's bring everyone, or as many people as we can, to a basic level of awareness.
Right, and speaking of why etiquette is important and what for is it there, like I look at it like it's a regulation. It's like traffic on the road. Imagine there was no rules. Imagine there were no rules or no etiquette and just like chaos and mess. Like it's pretty much is in Indonesia, right?
We're talking about Bali.
Yeah. Right, but yeah, again, so safety is number one and it has to be considered, and then joy, right? That fun, that actually ability to get your own wave and ride it like perfectly as you can, and not being dropped in with someone else and put in a hazard or dangerous situation, right? So
just having this conversation makes me realize how important at the very beginning that etiquette foundation and conversation is, because I think that's where you help people just beginning to realise that this is a long journey, this whole surfing thing and progression thing. And it's like, shout out to Dad Kook's review, who did a post about, it was a pretty amusing one. It referred to a beginner after a 10-pack of surf lessons, you know, and things going somewhat not right. And I think that's a great place to start, because people need to understand that just because you've had a bunch of lessons, the next step doesn't have to be a giant leap into a place where you are totally uncomfortable. So that gradual step-by-step progression into, you know, low intermediate, and then from low intermediate to intermediate,
Right.
the midsection of this giant place we call intermediate surfing, and then on from there. And this is a years-long progress and process. And and you and I have spoken at length about this, about people doing the hours, you know, like, and it's not like how long have you been surfing, because someone could say I've been surfing for a year, but they've only done it like once or twice a month for a year. And so how many hours is that? It's like, it's not enough. So yeah, I think the hours thing is really important, and learning the right way, and understanding the process, back to the whole awareness conversation. So yeah, and I think, I don't know, so from here we can go, do you have any specific questions?
Yeah, let's get closer into the subject. And what do you think common mistakes beginner surfers make when it comes to lineup rules, and how, of course, they can avoid them?
So the most common mistake they make is, unfortunately, not knowing the lineup rules. Now, if they do know them, then they're somewhat armed with a bit of knowledge, which is great. Then we could say, well, you know, whatever level you're at, you have to ask yourself, where do I feel comfortable and where do I feel really uncomfortable? And obviously, if you're not comfortable at all, it's not yet time to be doing that. And how do you know? I know, like, the only way to find out is to experience things, and that's fine. I could say, like, you know, the classic thing we talk about a lot is, like, how do you judge? Like, when it looks a bit bigger and there's a bit more swell energy, how do you judge whether I should go out or not? Okay, A, how do you feel? That's a good place to start. Now, B would be, do I think I could go to the water's edge, swim out to the takeoff spot and swim back in with no surfboard and feel comfortable about that? If the answer is yes, then, you know, chances are it's worth a try. But if the answer is no, then you're still not really ready for that situation yet. We could go on, like, I mean...
That's an amazing check-in point, although I see, like, a lot of people probably who started surfing in their, like, late 20s or 30s, like being adult basically, and not being a good swimmers,
Yes.
and especially not, like, grew up somewhere where, like, there is ocean and sea and open water. So those people, they would, like, even not consider to go to the ocean without the board. And for them, surfing is mostly about the boards, right? So they checking, like, oh, okay, I can stand up on the board, that means I can surf. Well, no, like,
and they're putting
truth is truth.
and they're putting their life in the hands of a little piece of urethane that attaches them to the board, and that sometimes breaks. And then what are you going to do, right? So, all right, so I'd like to turn the conversation over to you for a moment, because you started surfing in your mid-20s.
Right.
You've now been surfing for 15 years. You're from what I would refer to as an emerging surf country or nation. So I would like to ask you, when you first started here in Bali at the age of 26, from the time you began, like your very first lesson, how long roughly did you stay in that realm, that area of being a beginner and catching white waters, maybe with a guide or a surf coach or whatever it was? Like, how long did you take before you were paddling out to waves and maybe coming down to like smaller boards and that type of thing?
Well, I was introduced to a lineup quite early, but because I think I just took lessons when I started the first time in the Russian surf school, and I think those guys, they came up with a plan like, okay, let's push people in the white water a little bit, and then to make them interested in buying more lessons because they have had to offer something new. Otherwise, I can do it myself. Just rent a board and go practice. And I actually did. And I couldn't get like, oh, how ocean works. Like I was quite fit. I was in a good fitness shape when I started surfing. I used to work as a fitness coach at that time, so that helped me to actually be able, like, spend time in the ocean. Like, paddling was not a problem. I've got a lot of stamina and endurance and what's not. So I could, like, the longest time it took to understand, like, how is this working? Waves, period in between sets, like white water, the wave since I saw it and then until it breaks, and then all, like, for a very long time it seemed to me like a chaos.
Yeah.
Right? And I had no awareness at all about how ocean works, I guess, right? So nevertheless, I was introduced to a lineup quite quickly, and there was actually, there was a good time when the guy who was an instructor in the school, a Russian guy, he's been spending a lot of time with me, sitting together in a lineup, literally holding my board and like telling me, look at the ocean, what do you see? Like, try to read the wave, pay attention. And of course he'd push me onto the wave and I like fall, or I successfully popped up and ridden the wave for a little while. But I remember that time, it was about like a few lessons, 4 or 5 lessons. We'd paddle out in Kuta, sat in a lineup, and he was like talking. There was a lot of information with looking, with watching, with observing actually. And then, well, I practiced a lot in white water, and as I started teaching quite quickly, also helping the instructors on the like first lessons with people who were like first, second, third lesson in the white water, I myself spent a lot of time either catching white water or just walking there and observing other people how they do, right? So that helped me a lot. But what can I say to summarize all that? It took me 6 months to get that. Oh, okay, now I understand how to position, that basically was the moment when I actually, I thought about switching the boards from like mid-length, something like about 8, 7, 10, to something shorter. And I remember it was after 6 months.
And what do you mean by something shorter? What was it a fiberglass board? What was the length?
I think it was like 7.4.
Yep.
That was, I used that for a while. And then it was 6.6 or 6.8, something like that.
So would you say that you went from first lesson to the 6.6, was it? Did that happen within 1 year, or a little bit more or less, or?
Within, pretty much 1 year. Yeah.
So that's quite fast, in my opinion, to go from like a soft top to a, but you did it incrementally. I believe you did it well. Like you went from 7, 10 or 8 foot down to 7, 4, down to 6, 6. So there was gradual. And I would also add that something you didn't mention too is, and she had the benefit of having incredibly good body mobility from her job as a personal trainer.
Right. That, as I said, like the fitness shape I was in, it was a big support, like my physical level. And I think it's a lot in surfing because surfing is quite a demand, right? Not now, like people who has been surfing for a long time, they maybe do it like now. It's not really a demand for their physical level now after like being surfing for a while, but at the beginning, that's like, so physical fitness was great. And also I want to mention that I went in the ocean like every single day, maybe 5 days out of, or 6 days out of week, right? And sometimes twice.
Yeah.
Like that amount
so
of
we're talking
hours I
hundreds of hours a year, maybe 500.
More.
Yeah. So if it's 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's 5 times 2, 10 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That's 500 hours a year.
What we call in a physical world or world of sport, 100 hours of basic adaptation for the body, for the mind, to the movements, to the environment. Yeah, at least 100 hours, and that should be done in a safe, appropriate condition.
Yeah.
Then from there we can move somewhere else.
So your journey is like quite, let's say, unique in a way because of the amount of hours you were able to do daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and then it led you to, continuing on doing it as a job and then progressing as a surf coach as well. You should surf that much now.
What advice do you think we can or we could give to surfers on recognizing their skill level and choosing the appropriate waves to avoid disrupting in a lineup? And so, as I just mentioned, 100 hours of basic adaptation, that would be like my advice to people. Like, okay, watch, when you accumulate 100 hours, and from there you can at least start, thinking, oh, maybe change surf spot or maybe try to explore new places and so on.
All right, so let's first look at the number. Let's look at 100 hours. So if we broke that down into, for example, the individual's able to do 2 hours of surfing 2 days a week. So that's 4 hours per week. So that's 25 weeks before they get to 100 hours. So 6 months, right? 26 weeks is 6 months. So 6 months of surfing 2 times a week for 2 hours per session, and I guarantee you they're probably better off doing 4 1-hour sessions because their fitness level's probably not going to cope with 2 hours unless they're getting a lot of help. So, okay, 6 months of being a beginner, and to me, like being a beginner, like, you should, at that point, you shouldn't be entering waves above head high, reef breaks that become shallow, crowded lineups, that sort of thing. Like that first 6 months should be just about adaptation to getting to learn about the ocean, the way it acts, the energy you get in the ocean, and how to interact with it in a comfortable manner. The best piece of advice I can give people is don't be in a hurry. You know what I mean? Because it's a long journey. It is the hardest part because everyone wants everything now these days, but surfing isn't like that. It's a sport that demands patience, awareness, consciousness. Why did that go wrong? Or why did it go right? What did I just feel? It comes back to our whole tension series where if you're tense, you're not going to know why something didn't go well.
Right.
You're just going to know that it sucked.
Yeah. Yeah, why people say that, oh, I didn't see you, oh, I thought you were like not there, and dropping onto each other, right? Because why they don't see is
Tension.
because they tense and they don't know what they're
Boom.
doing themselves.
Peripheral's gone.
And they just in a mode of
Yeah.
surviving rather than like really comfortably observing what's going on, and if there's someone in a priority situation, give them away. And
yeah,
so
any good surfer, like really experienced surfers, we know when we're paddling out, if someone's on a wave, we know if they can see us or not. And I, like for me personally, when I'm like, oh, this person's like got this huge field of vision, but I can see the tension in their body, so I know they can't see me and they're coming in my direction or heading straight for me, I'll start taking evasive action a long time before they get anywhere near me, because I know they won't see me until they're right on top of me. And then in that tense state, when they do finally lock eyes on me, they won't be able to take their eyes off me and they'll keep coming straight towards me, because that's what tension does. Right. So yeah, anyway. Yeah, look, I mean, studying the ocean, let's look at that. Like that can help you with the whole etiquette conversation, just watching waves for hours and hours at a time from the beach, in between surfs. Laird Hamilton talks about it in that clip, the 10,000 hours. That's where you want to move towards, to, you know, becoming really experienced at knowing why waves do what they do.
In anything, right?
Yeah.
Not only in surfing,
exactly.
But in anything. So yeah, guys, start accumulating your hours. Maybe start writing in your diary and journaling about surfing. I think that's really good practice, right? Like, okay, I went for surfing this morning. How did I feel? What did I learn? What was good about this surfing session? What was bad about this surfing session? Is there anything I think I acted or behaved wrongly, or like all of it? Like how ocean was.
Did something happen because of my lack of awareness? It's a simple question. It's like there's no right or wrong attached to this. It's just like, was there a situation that because of my lack of awareness, stuff got pretty crazy, like shit got real. And it maybe ended up in you being really freaked out, or someone else, and hopefully no one injured, but just being able to assess that and look at it for what it was, and okay, how can I avoid that happening again? That sort of reflection is something that'll benefit you all through your surfing journey.
Speaking of experienced surfers, I know that they have their own situations in the lineup where it gets to some fiery kind of arguing and so on. So do you think experienced surfers can lead by their own example and contribute to a positive and respectful atmosphere in the water, even if they're beginners?
See this? It's a tin of worms. Boom. Okay, so it's another great conversation to have. Really experienced surfers, one thing they excel at is adapting to the situation they are presented with on the day, in the moment, right? Now, the way they adapt will be dictated by who that person is, what their personality, their traits, right? So if it's a really mellow dude, he's going to be able to adapt. He might go, all right, look, I'm not going to be super aggressive. I'm just going to wait for the right waves. I'm going to be respectful, keep the vibe good. Another guy might like have that real aggressive side of him. And I don't mean violent. I just mean like real competitive, aggressive sort of in the water thing. And he's just going to go take every wave. And people are going to notice that too. Just like they notice the really cool guy, they're going to notice the dickhead. So that's like, it's just going to happen. You'll learn to see that. Like Everyone that is a good surfer knows exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes like really lower level surfers won't really pick up on it. They'll just go, oh, that guy always seems to be in the right place. And yeah, he is, but he might be taking advantage of all the lower level surfers in the lineup. Now again, I'm not saying this is good or bad. It's just situational, right? I will say also, in the case of, if you're a really good surfer, like a high level surfer, and you have that awareness where you see everything and it's just a good thing to have, like trust me. If you're in a situation where, and I've experienced this a lot and it took me a long time to learn it. If you're in a situation where something happens to you and like it revolves around a lower level surfer's lack of awareness, and there's a situation, it might be a collision or an almost collision or just a drop in or whatever. There's always that temptation to lose your shit, right? To really, blah, 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 to become like fly off the handle a little bit. And here's the thing, you don't know at all what that person knows or doesn't know. Like if that person has no awareness whatsoever of surf etiquette, and you're yelling at them, it's not going to have any effect apart from scare the crap out of them. But if you're able to like just take a breath, go and paddle to them and go, look, what you just did then was quite dangerous, and here's how things are meant to work in the surf, and if you're not at this level, but if you speak in a calm manner, you'll often be pretty surprised about how well that information's received. Don't get me wrong, I've been the guy losing it, and I've also been the guy that tried the calm approach, and I see the difference it makes, and it doesn't mean I'm always going to be able to do the calm approach. Like, as again, situational, right? If I'm already like wound up, I might kind of go, but even after I do it, I'm going to realize it was kind of pointless and no good message was received. So yeah, being able to keep it really calm. I'll give you an example, right? And it's from back when I lived in Australia, and I was out at Currumbin Alley, which is like a long right-hand point break, and there was this guy right down the end, like zipping around in a jet ski, like in the lineup. And there's actually laws in Australia that say, I don't know if it's still the same, not allowed within 400 metres of the breaking waves or whatever it is. But I was really pissed. And at some point I was very close to him, and I took the question approach rather than the attack approach. And I said, excuse me, do you realise that the law states blah, 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 and that you're not only doing something dangerous, but it's also against the law? And he looked at me and went, actually, I had no idea. I'm really sorry. And he left. And I was like, oh my God, that worked really well. So you can see, like, people don't know what they don't know, right? And you can apply that. Like that same situation could apply to another surfer, like a beginner surfer, and being able to explain it to them calmly, do your best, you know. It may actually, they may go out of that surf going, wow, I learned something really important that they didn't teach me when I took those surf lessons. So there's that.
Right, and this is where it comes to actually where people learning and who teaches them, right? And that situation, like who should you address actually that situation if a people or a person being pushed into the waves?
Yeah.
Like who's the fault? Yeah, if someone's dropping on me, but not because like they're they like doing it involuntarily, right? They're just victims of someone who wants to teach them how to surf. That's just mind blowing. So
often you'll see it at breaks. There's like a sign, and it's just a general etiquette. You know, like if you're paddling out and people are taking off on the wave, don't paddle into their path. Paddle into the impact zone if that's the best place to be, which is not in their path. Well, there's a few basic rules. I can't remember I know the sign and I know all that stuff off by heart. I don't know which ones are applied on the sign, but they're pretty good. But if someone has zero idea of surf etiquette from the moment they started, they're going to look at that sign and not understand a thing.
No, at all.
So it's important that they're taught the basics, so at least when they see the sign, they understand, yeah, I was taught a lot of that stuff and it makes sense.
Right. What's snaking? Snaking.
Snaking.
We know what snaking is.
Snacking. Snaking. I mean, this is also a big conversation, right? And it's basically, so okay, we'll start here. Say the lineup's really crowded. Now, then you're going to come down to a situation of it's going to almost be separated into experienced surfers and non-experienced surfers. And I could almost hypothesize that the non-experienced surfers, if it's a high level wave, they're going to get almost no waves, because the experienced surfers are going to be all positioning for the best waves at the very least in that particular spot. And even if the non-experienced surfers attempt to move to that spot, they're probably not going to be allowed to catch a wave. By that I mean, you know, people are going to outmaneuver them because of their skill levels. Now, inside that experienced group, trust me, they pretty much all know whose turn it is. And someone might paddle up underneath the group thinking he's going to go get a smaller wave, but then come back this way and take off inside of the person whose turn was next. In a good lineup of experienced surfers, it kind of won't be allowed to happen. And if it happens if it happens and then it happens again and then it happens again, probably people are going to call that guy out. So yeah, it's basically like taking a wave out of turn. It's not that simple, but because let's just go with this one example. So let's say there's a group of experienced surfers and there's one guy who's a little bit timid. He's experienced and has the skill level, but he's got a little bit of fear or apprehension or whatever. Maybe it came to his turn and he paddled and pulled back. If that happened like on 2 or 3 occasions, people are going to start paddling up inside of him and taking waves. And even that could be referred to as snaking. But I'm going to hypothesize, or I'm just going to say it out loud, he gave them the opportunity to do that by not committing to the wave.
Right, that's what I heard the most. Like, well, first of all, snaking, we put it into like more of an experienced surfing term and realm, right? It's not like someone being a beginner can complain, oh, people are like snaking me or something. And I actually heard that from a beginner / low intermediate people, where they like they timid or they shy or they're not really commit to waves, but they are like in a good position, and then someone just comes there and take the wave, and they're like, oh my god, this person like snaking me, that's not like fair and all that stuff. But this is exactly like, it's a different level of surfing already, right? Where that term comes in, and again, how you act, how you behave. Is there a communication among those people who are in the best spot or who are in a like most challenging position? That there should be. If there's not, like, what's the point to talk about like snaking or something?
There's a saying that I was told when I was quite young by one of my close friends' older brother. Shout out Hector Crawford, rest in peace, brother. It was, if you want to play with the big dogs, don't piss like a puppy. So it's basically like, you know, you've got to go after it. You've got to be amongst it. Yeah, you know, like big dogs cock their leg and piss wherever they want, and puppies still do that kind of thing. But yeah, it's basically that. Once you're ready to go there, then, you know, you'll get your chance, and grab it with both hands and prove to people that you're ready, you know. So this brings us to another part of the etiquette subject, this huge subject. And I could talk about, so my experience from growing up in Australia, and this is, I first started surfing in the mid to late 70s. So I was very young then, but as I moved from beginner like into the early 80s, I was, you know, there was like this crew at the beach. There was no surf coaches, there was no surf schools, nothing like that. It was just the kids, the young adults, and the elders, right? And that's how it was. And when you were ready to progress from the kiddies' corner and to parts of the beach where the waves were a little bigger, and then, you know, the older guys were there, and like, you know, my cousin was one of the older guys and all his friends, and they were cool. Like, we looked up to them and we respected them, but we wanted to surf there as well, and so we paddled out. And at the beginning, like, you were welcomed, yeah, cool, but you couldn't just have any wave you wanted. Like, you had to wait your turn, and often your turn was go for this one, Grom, and you're given a closeout, right? Or like one of the shittier waves, and sometimes they deliberately give you a proper closeout just to see if you'd go. And if you went, then maybe you'd earn a better wave on your next time around. And look, it worked really well. It was just a top-down hierarchy. Admittedly, there wasn't as many people surfing back then, but it still got crowded. But it was just a beautiful way to get brought up. Like, you respected your elders. You're meant to do that in all parts of life. Just remember that, especially now I'm getting old. But yeah, it was a beautiful way to grow up. And when you obeyed that simple process, we can call them rules if we want. When you conformed to that, you are actually, then you got invited to go on surf trips. You know, it might be out to the local reef break for the first time in your life. Like, there was these places where we were like, oh, and then someone would go, you want to come out there in the car with us? And, you know, I remember a guy saying, he pulled up at the local milk bar. I was with my friend and we were like playing the machines. And he's like, I need a couple of people to come out to the reefs with me because it's pretty sharky and I don't want to be out there alone. And we were like, yep, we're coming. But that was the way he termed it, was like, you know, I'm only letting you guys come so there's less chance of me getting bitten by a shark. But I'm sure it was just to see if we'd say yes or no. And we were like, yeah, we're all over it. And I remember it clear as day because it was pumping and it was like such a big deal.
I think we get back to where it was a part of life. That was a process just of like normal life, where now a lot of people, it's their hobby, they pick the sport as a hobby and they kind of like, you know, it must be done in a certain period of time. I want to be this and surfing, that program is better than that one. Like, it's something special where, like what you're talking about, I guess it was just a normal process of
experience growing up.
No one were rushing to anywhere, right? It's like amazing.
You make a great point. Like, people are in, like, you know, as we get older, we conform to these rigid schedules. So if we're learning a new thing as we're older, we're not as curious or playful about it as children are. So it's literally more difficult for us to learn. So maybe we just need to like chill out a bit and smile and relax and enjoy the shitty parts, you know, like take your beatings and go, all right, I learned something there. And maybe like when you do have time to go somewhere, say for example, if you're a person who like you want to go on a surfing holiday, rather than pick a wave that's maybe challenging and going to be popular or busy, go to a lesser known wave that's a bit less challenging but really uncrowded if it's available to you. And spending a week in those conditions with less pressure to perform and just more room to explore and be curious and that kind of thing, you may get amazing progress from it.
That's a great advice. Yeah, that's a great advice. Yeah, just enjoy the process, don't push it, and remember, if you started surfing in your 20s, 30s, like being an adult, you gotta turn back to being a child or grown as you're learning how to surf, right? That's inevitable process. You can't be like, I know how it can feel intimidating for adults to be a beginners or to like learn very simple thing, and well,
it's great advice.
It's
advice for life. Learn to be childlike again.
Right. Yeah, when you learn something new, just open your mind like a child, like a kid's mind, and be open and approach everything with that like pure openness and interest and curiosity, and don't expect from yourself much, right? Because this is where adults actually failing a lot, like where they like, I can do it, but yeah, sure you can, just don't hurry up the process and just enjoy as much as you can. Stay safe and
use your time wisely.
Exactly.
Like if you're in a, like you might have access to a beach that's not that great for surfing. Maybe it's perfect for swimming. Maybe there's like little waves like this that are a little bit dumpy or whatever, close to the shore, but there's no rip currents. Maybe it's a great place just to swim and learn to body surf. And maybe once you learn to body surf, you could start pulling into the little closeout barrels. Growing up in Australia, this is where all the learning happens when you're a kid. It was off the surfboard. It was swimming in the ocean and feeling your way around it, even in currents, because the way we're brought up, like we get taught at a very early age, this is a rip current, this is what they do. If you're ever caught in one, this is how you get out of it. And we would actually go and look for them and deliberately swim into them so we could find our way back out in a controlled, safe situation. So yeah, that type of thing, the experience, the knowledge you'll gather from it is amazing. As adults, we don't do it, right? We go for our surf and then we just go and sit at a cafe or a restaurant. We might even have our back turned to the ocean. I can't do it. I'm like always like looking at the waves in between surfs. I want to just see it always,
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we're gonna wrap it up.
It's been a good chat.
Yeah. Hope it was helpful for you guys. Any questions, just let us know in the comments. Follow us on Instagram, and we see you next time.
Thanks for having us.